Facebook and YouTube. That's the word I was looking for. Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube all at the same time. And I only have a few minutes, but I wanted to chat with some folks about some things. So I'm going to get right to the point. So, as folks know, last week we had a week off from our school board meetings for our local elections. Well, I mean, everybody was doing elections, but for our local elections in particular. So we had that, so we didn't have a school board meeting. And I was a little bit worried that people were going to kind of forget about everything that had happened in the school district and everything that's going on with both the basically subjugation of the teachers and of the students. And it turns out that folks have not forgotten. Yesterday, I was able to access the coming school board agenda for the upcoming meeting for the Olean City School District. And I really thought it was, frankly, pretty interesting, and I wanted to let some other folks know what was going on because it's going to be an interesting meeting. I would encourage absolutely everybody that can to show up this Tuesday night at 6:30 at the Olean City School District School Board meeting. It is held at the Olean City High School at 6:30. What you're going to find out this week is that the meeting will begin at 6:30, and then immediately after the pledge, the meeting is going into executive session, which essentially means no public can be there. Only the school board can be there. So they're opening the meeting and then kicking everybody back out for executive session. Now, if you've gone to a school board meeting before, you'll find that interesting because usually the school board public comment is right in the beginning. And I think that they are essentially trying to ice out the kicker. It would be my assertion that they're trying to dissuade people from coming to speak, dissuade people from coming to the meeting by placing public comment almost dead last in the school board meeting. I'm not sure. I can't speak to the motive, but we need people to show up. And that's why I'm making this video, because we are going to be outside protesting during the executive session. We need people to show up. We need people to show up with signs, and we need people to demand that the Olean City School Board and Olean City School District Administration protect our students and respect our teachers. Feel free to bring a sign. Feel free to join us outside at 6:30. We will be standing in protest with the signs outside until public comment begins, whenever that may be. If you're seeing this video, I'm asking you to please share it. If you came to the first or second protest, especially the student protest, I need you folks to share it because it's incredibly important that people show up. Essentially, we have 4 people there's 11 people scheduled to speak. And of those 11 people, 4 people are slated to speak on what could be a veritable amount of ridiculousness, let's say. So shockingly enough, we do have people speaking from the OTA, which is great because previously the school board has tried to limit comments from the Olean area teachers. So it's great that we are going to have teacher representation there, and I think that that's important for us. And then we have 4 other folks, like I said, 4 other folks that are going to be joining us that I think, let's just say it's going to be interesting to see what they have to say, and you're not going to want to miss it. So I'm going to give you folks a quick overview of that in just a second. I just want to share this video to a couple pages real quick so that we can get it on and poppin'. If you're available, though, this Tuesday at 6:30, we need as many people as possible to join us and protest outside of the Olean City School District School Board meeting. Update and protest. All right. This Tuesday at 6:30 outside of the Olean City School District School Board meeting. Please join the Olean Regional Justice Coalition and a whole ton of other concerned citizens and come join us in protest about the events that are happening in the Olean City School District currently. So we have 4 people coming out of 11 that are slated to speak, and it looks as if 2 of them are local conservative pastors. I'm saying conservative based on the churches that they are aligned with, and a cursory view of their Facebook profile and Facebook friends. But it looks like we have 2 conservative Christian pastors coming in, and I can only assume that that will be scintillating. And then we have another unknown straight white male who seems to have problem with LGBTQ people coming, and I say that because I've heard some things about him from just other people in town. And then we have someone who was formerly employed at Walsh and who was actually my a couple of my children's teachers actually. And it's sure to be a real zinger with this guy present. So I wanted to kind of give you folks some feel of what is coming up. So we have I'm not going to name names because it's not really important, to be honest. But we have one of the first speaker up is going to be a teacher from the Olean Area Teachers Association. The second speaker coming up to speak is concerned with elementary schools' sexual preference and the school curriculum. So the fact that this dude is using the word sexual preference right off the way is like basically completely invalidating to anybody who is LGBTQ. It is diminishing in a way that it implies that gay people have a choice and that their choice somehow affects public schools, elementary schools, and school curriculum. So I'm sure that there will be some books that we are invited to burn. That's my guess. Some censorship that we would like to put in the library, but we'll see. We'll see. Could get interesting. Who knows? Just the term sexual preference pretty much lets you know right off the bat that it's going to be a slanted and biased speech. So we have that person coming up. Then we have another teacher. And then we have someone coming up whose explicit topics of comment will be support for an individual's First Amendment rights, refutation of the fallacious notion of calling for an individual's removal that is in any way representative of the broader Olean community. So this person is coming clearly with a soapbox and completely with a nonsensical understanding of what we're even talking about. Like, if we're being honest, that's what's happening. This is not a First Amendment conversation. This is not a freedom of speech conversation. You can say absolutely whatever you want. But the thing is you can't say things that go against the school board code of ethics when you're a school board employee. You can't say things that intentionally and specifically diminish the existence of people of difference. You cannot say that. It is not okay for an administrator to say, hey, you know, this section of the student body, you're evil. That's not okay, and that's not acceptable. It's not you can say that. You can say that all you want. I mean, it's bigoted and it's ridiculous and it's harmful, but you can say that absolutely as much as you want. You can shout it from the street corners. You have that right to say ridiculous, bigoted things. Welcome to America, right? To steal a line from Kevin Doherty, it's America. You can be racist, okay? Cool. But you cannot do that from a position of a public school administrator where your responsibility is the care and nurturing of every student within the public school system. You can have freedom of speech, but that doesn't mean freedom of responsibility. Also, if this person had really been attentive to what is going on, they would notice that many people are not calling for punitive measures of this person who said these statements. Some folks have, and that's fine. Everybody gets to. But most people are asking for a conversation from the school board that A, says, sorry, this goes against our school. This is not what we're about. And B, we're taking measures so that it won't happen again. Because this same issue happened earlier on in the Olean City School District. I have a question from Instagram. Yes, I am live on Facebook and YouTube right now as well. So feel free to share. Please tag this video. Please spread it to people because we need people to know what's happening, because people are starting to try to ramp up this like sort of hateful, bigoted campaign. They're trying to build into our school district a clause for Christian-centric, white-centric, no one's standing outside with a pike, with someone's head in effigy on a stick saying, like, burn this person. What people are saying is, this has happened before and it's happening. Literally, you have freedom of speech, but you don't have freedom of, or you don't have freedom from responsibility of your speech. And one of the responsibilities of public speech is to uphold the agencies that you work for, especially if you are in a leadership and administrative position. So, this fourth speaker should be super interesting because they're completely missing the point. First, freedom of speech is absolutely a thing of American society, but that's great. But this conversation is not a freedom of speech conversation. This conversation is about what is appropriate to come from someone who's supposed to be a leader and a mentor of diverse students. We can leave out the fact, I'll make a side note of the fact that this former person whose incident incited all of this issue, right? That person has in fact proselytized on school grounds, an issue which I'm sure will come out in subpoenas. So we'll let that happen. But as far as myself and most of the other people I've spoken to, our concern, I presented a list of demands that we presented 3 years ago at the school board meeting. I re-presented them at the first meeting after this sort of speech blew up, right? Not one of the asks in that list had to do with a singular person. Everything had to do with the system and the underlying problem that is causing this. And the other speakers that have spoken, for the most part, have spoken about how we need to do something to change this and protect our students, right? Our students. Because apparently the First Amendment conversation has forgotten the rights that our students have as students in a public school. And they have rights to a safe, equitable, and in passionate, committed education. I can't remember all the words. I was on the New York State Education website last night. I'll share the link, actually. But students have rights too, right? And their right is to learn in an environment when it's possible for them to learn. And you cannot go to an environment that does not have an acceptance of who you are as a person. You can't go and expect in good faith to feel like you're going to be educated if the principal has told you that you're demon possessed via your belonging to this certain classification of people. You can't do that. You can't do that. And so far, the Olean City School District has failed to acknowledge the impropriety of these statements. First of all, just a basic, we are sorry, City of Olean, this is not our mission, vision, and values. So far, the city council and members of the student body and members of the community have had to remind the school board of the school board code of the school code of conduct and of the rules. And so far, not even so much as we're sorry for people who may have been hurt has been said. So yes, you have a freedom of speech, but freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from responsibility. Period. This is not a constitutional issue. This is an issue with the school board failing to put in place safeguards to protect our students from harmful hate speech. Period. The next two speakers on the list have been there before. They plan to talk about a social media policy and a public comment at meeting, and someone else wants to talk about public comment at meetings and the diversity board. Okay. Our next speaker, which is listed as Speaker G, wants to talk about current issues discussed at board meetings. Okay, great. That's a very broad topic, but this person seems to have already seems to have a bent against LGBTQ people. And I'm not saying this because I'm queer. I'm saying this because that's just what I found out in researching this person. But this person is completely comfortable with literally disowning and subjugating LGBTQ people up to and including people who would be in their own family. So I don't have a lot of hope for this speaker, but it could be a little bit of a wild card. Maybe they'll surprise me. Who knows? However, I think it is going to be most likely yet another freedom of speech, anti-LGBTQ, freedom of religion commentary. We'll see what happens. Then we have another speaker who's going to be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But apparently they listed the topic as not really what the person has been saying, because Tim's on here. It's Tim, he's speaking, and he's listed as diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we will see what happens there. The next person we have is a teacher. So cool. We'll wait to hear that. The second to last person that we have is a conservative Christian pastor. I'm saying conservative Christian based on the sort of religious views that they put out on their Facebook and the churches that they've associated themselves with. And they plan to be talking about religious liberties, which I'm glad. I'm honestly glad. I am so glad that we're talking about religious liberties, because you know what I would like to talk about? Religious liberties of our Muslim student population. That is what I would like to talk about, because so far everyone wants to talk about freedom of religion. Everyone wants to talk about freedom of religion, which is dope. You should absolutely have freedom of religion. That's like an American tenet. However, that means freedom of religion for our Muslim students and colleagues and community members. And so far, that's an overlooked part of this conversation, because we want to talk about how a Christian pastor should be allowed to say whatever they want to say. But if they're preaching and they're associated with the highest level of leadership in the Olean City School District, why is it their religious freedom to say that another religion is evil? Let's have a conversation about that. If we want to talk about religious liberties, we should talk about the religious liberties that belong to our Muslim students and that are not being upheld. Because we currently have students who are actively being bullied for being Muslim. We have people who, as little as 2 weeks ago, are Muslim, and they were walking down the street with their family, and they were harassed not once but twice in the same evening by people driving by who felt comfortable enough and safe enough to harass them. We have other Muslim students in the building that are actively being picked on for being Muslim. It's known, it's talked about. It is, in fact, commonplace. So what are we talking about when we're talking about religious liberties? Because as it stands in America, Christians have the absolute most highest level of religious liberties, period. We literally assume America to be a Christian nation. And people are trying to talk about religious liberties. Get out of here with your persecution complex. Listen, American Christians are perhaps the most privileged religious group in the whole world. They literally will lay claim to things like the Constitution and the entire country and say that this nation is founded on godly principles, and we need to go back to that. Newsflash, one nation under God was not added to the pledge until like the 50s. Okay? This is not a conversation that is being presented free and fair. Because religious liberties need to apply to all religions, which if you really want to get serious, let's talk about why that we haven't had a pagan or a Wiccan prayer at the beginning of the school board meetings. Let's talk about why we haven't had a prayer in Arabic at the school board meetings. Let's talk about why Muslim students are being harassed. Let's talk about why people are proselytizing on school time. That's the religious liberties conversation we need to have. Because right now, we are having a Christian-centric conversation, and apparently that is the only religious liberties that we are concerned with, which is highly troubling, because other religions exist. And if you want to bring up religious freedom, then we should be talking about the Muslim students who are currently experiencing anti-Muslim, Islamophobic, hateful comments over and over and over again in the halls of our school. We are not talking about Christian only, and we are certainly not talking about evangelical, white, straight, cis, heterosexual males. Like, come on. When the cry for religious liberties comes from that voice, you can pretty much assure that at this moment in time, we're talking about a freedom for the people who are already free, and we're not talking about religious liberty. We're talking about Christian-centric viewpoints. So let's have a conversation about religious liberty. Let's have it. Let's open the next school board meeting with an Islamic prayer. Let's do it. Let's go there. Because if we're going to talk about religious liberties, we're going to talk about religious liberties for everybody. Because they keep telling us all the Huskies pull the sled, but they're only worried about the white Christian Huskies right now. Cool. Religious liberties. Let's get at it, folks. Let's do it. The last speaker is me, because I've been blessed with an alphabetically late name, let's say. And according to the school board agenda, I'm talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'll see. In terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, there has been absolutely no transparency with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Board. And as a matter of fact, the board president recently vetoed the appointment of a diverse person from the school board to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee board. We don't have anybody who is temporarily able-bodied, right? We don't have anybody who is not, or who is disabled on our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. To my knowledge, we don't have any interfaith perspective. We don't have any Muslim perspective. We don't have any Jewish perspective. We don't have any pagan perspective. We don't have any English as a second language speaker perspective. We don't have any ableism perspective. We don't have any poverty perspective. You know what? We have the same people talking that are dominating the conversation anyways. On our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, we actually have people who are comfortable saying that they don't approve of the LGBTQ lifestyle. How can you have a good faith conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion when you're coming to the table with someone that says, nope, don't agree with gays? Like, what don't you agree with? You don't agree with, like, a gay person's right to exist? Because I'm confused what you just carte blanche don't agree with. So you can't comprise a diversity and equity inclusion committee of people who do not believe in the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think it'll be interesting to see what the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee happens to say. And from what I understand, the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee is almost entirely administration. And they've been having meetings for the past few weeks that have been kind of stymied by people who don't believe we need diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so then these amorphous conversations that have been had are going to get passed through another committee, like procedural committee, and then they're going to go to the school board. But the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee doesn't actually know what's being presented to the school board. Does that seem problematic? That seems like the administration has a stranglehold on all of these things, because I don't think the diversity, equity, inclusion committee needs to be administration driven. Like, if you keep doing the same things with the same people, you're going to get the same results. That's absurd. You cannot comprise a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, A, from people who are not diverse, and B, from people who don't believe in the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, I say all of this to say, it is absolutely crucial that people come out this Tuesday night at 6:30 and stand in protest at the Olean City School Board meeting and demand that people protect our students and respect our teachers. Because in the middle of this giant sandstorm of activity, the teachers are the ones who are providing triage to the students who are harmed by these words from administration and who are actively being bullied and not protected in the school system. The teachers are providing triage for our students. But instead, we won't give the teachers a fair contract. We will try to limit when they can speak in public by not letting them on the agenda. And we're just going to continue to screw over the teachers and the students. So who really is the school board protecting and respecting right now? Because it seems like the administration is protecting and respecting itself by not holding itself accountable, by not setting safeguards in place for the future, and by increasing their own salary at a rate that is 4 times greater than they proposed to increase the teacher's salary. With the benefit, or with the raise that the teachers would get being eaten up by their health care. And still, a 20-year teacher in our school is making $300 less a year than a brand new teacher at a more rural school that neighbors our school district. You cannot have the people who have created the problem fix the problem. You are exactly right, Tim. You cannot have the people who have created the problem fix the problem. That is absurd. That is actually the definition of insanity. So I need people to show up this Tuesday night at 6:30 in front of the Olean City School District. Bring your signs. Please lift up the cry that the city school district, the board, and the administration protect our students and respect our teachers. Please feel free to put that on t-shirts. Feel free to put that on signs, and show up and stand firm. Because the teachers are standing up for our students, so we need to add them into this. We need to stand up for them. We need to stand up, students, teachers, community members, united, with the cry that we need to protect our students and respect our teachers, especially when the Olean City Teachers, or the Olean Teachers Association, literally took out a full-page ad saying that they do not condemn their students, they respect them. So we need to add that same respect. We need to stand in solidarity against a system that is broken and that is made to perpetuate itself. Please join me Tuesday night at 6:30 out front of the Olean High School to protest in front of the Olean City School District Board meeting, especially since we're going to be locked out for the first however long of the meeting for executive session. We will see you all